Well, nice questions. Thank you for being on Rockline tonight. We're going to let John have his turn. He's in Philadelphia listening to 94 WYSP. John, you're on with Mick.
Hi there.
Hi, John.
What I want to ask is, your first solo album came out in 1985.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, you'd been in the music business for over 20 years. I just wanted to ask, why did you decide at that time to release your first solo album, as opposed to having released it, many years earlier?
I don't really know why that exact moment. It just seemed time to do one. I just felt at that point, if I didn't get on and do one, I'd just talk about doing it, and I'd never actually do it.
Greg, you're on with Mick Jagger.
Hi there, Mick. It's an absolute pleasure to talk to you. This is the thrill of my life.
Hi, Greg. How are you?
Oh, I'm not too bad, thanks. The
Good.
question I wanted to ask you tonight is, after being with the music scene for so long and having inspired every rock and roll band, do you feel it is a lot more difficult now to write original material, especially when starting fresh with a solo career?
Funnily enough, no. It was much more difficult at the beginning to write. That was really head-banging, sort of, was trying to get songs out right at the beginning, because in those days, Keith and I didn't write nothing but ballads, you see. We wrote songs like As Tears Go By and so on. We couldn't seem to write rock song until the last time. So we had like a couple of years in there which we felt that we should really be creative. And we weren't sort of dishing out enough rock material for it, so we're still doing cover versions. And I don't think that writing is that any more difficult. Whether the actual quality's in there or not is like a very kind of subjective thing. But I mean, I enjoy writing almost the most thing of all, because it's the most satisfying part of being in music, right? And you're on your own for the beginning of it anyway. You might be writing with, other people, and they really help you, but sometimes that inspiration comes when you're really on your own, sitting at home at night or something, and then you kick it around with other people. But I don't find it sort of runs out on you, thank goodness.
Yeah, really. Do you write a lot these days? There are 10 songs on Primitive Cool. Did you write more than that for the album? Yeah,
I wrote another, 8 or 9 songs that some of them are as good as the ones on here. There's other ballads, and you think, I've got enough ballads. And also there's songs that you perhaps don't fit quite the mood of this record, and you think, well, we can work these around and throw them around and do something different with them later on.
Mm-hmm. Save them for later. Greg, Thank you for your call. We appreciate it. We're going to let Rick have his turn. Rick is in DeKalb, Illinois, listening to the Loop FM 98 in Chicago. Good evening, Rick.
Hi, Mick. How you doing?
I'm fine, and you?
Oh, I don't think I've ever been better in my life. I told the same thing to Ron Wood about a week and a half ago.
You got through to him too, huh?
Yeah, I love you guys. You're the best. Okay, let me just say, I want to know how you look back on the 60s and that whole psychedelic thing. What do you think of that now?
Well, the 60s has kind of got a lot of things going in it, not only psychedelia. To me, psychedelia is just one section of it. In the beginning of the 60s was all sort of tight suits and little ties and so on, and later on, the psychedelia thing didn't go down until, the middle of the 60s, and how do I look back in it? It's kind of a very hazy recollection of it, I must tell you. But when you see the pictures, it's hilarious to think that what you were wearing. So what were you thinking about? I really don't know. I think people were very swept along with thinking that the world was going to change overnight. And some people used to go out there and actually say that people like Timothy Leary and so on, they would think that the world was going to change overnight if people took acid enough times. But it didn't, it changed a lot, but it didn't change totally, and it's naive to expect that it would. But they were some really fun times in there. There's no doubt about that. And when you actually see pictures of them and videos and things, it really brings it back. And there was some great music going down then.
Sure was.
As well, some wonderful music. And look, people were taking a lot of chances with music, and it wasn't such a commercial type of era as it is now, as far as getting out there and hustling and all that. People were prepared to do strange things and stand by them, and that was kind of wonderful.
The gentleman is in Troy, New York, and his name is Ed. Ed, good evening.
Hi. Mick, I was wondering if you think that there are any particular factors which led to the Stones' success and longevity, and if there are, how these relate to the current status of the band.
I'll try and get to the first bit first. I don't know how it's going to relate to the last bit. But I don't know. You see, the thing about it's very hard sort of analysing it all from the inside. Especially as it seems to me, it seems quite a long time ago now. But I think the Stones have, from the beginning, had a real kind of passion for what they did in those very early days. You know, being a blues band and all that was quite rare, and there was a real feeling of breaking through this kind of music rather than being in the mainstream of pop and so on. So that was a kind of real power behind what people wanted to do then. And they felt very much in a minority and very much sort of laughed at and all that. So that when you're in that position, it always gives you an extra kick that you really want to break through, and you know you're. And as soon as you get up in front of an audience, you know that they really like you. So that give a lot of motivation. Then I think that there's obviously a tremendous amount of enthusiasm. Any rock band needs a tremendous amount of enthusiasm. And I think the thing carrying it through was really the writing, that you can't really exist and as a band for any length of time unless you really get down and write some really good songs. And I think that Keith and I did that. And as for your for the next bit of your question, I mean, I don't see that why the Stones don't sort of continue, and I see that the Stones continue as a band despite the problems we've had recently, for whatever reasons.
Let's hope that happens. And thank you for your call, Ed. We're going to talk to Andy now in Portland, Maine, listening to WBLM. Andy, you're on with Mick Jagger.
Good evening, Mick. How you doing?
Hi, Andy.
That's great. Hey, my question concerns the audience these days, the youth pop rock culture, I guess. Do you think that their attitude towards rock has changed substantially? You know, the 60s, the us, and the 70s, the me, and the 80s, who knows what's going on? Do you think it's changed quite a bit, or what do they want and appreciate, I guess?
Well, that's kind of interesting. It spans you span a lot of generation there and a lot of years. But if you think back to the 50s was a very posy period. You know, there was lots of singers. There were some great singers, but a lot of them were coming out with very cute and very good looking and very posed. You know, a bit like you think of like James Dean and so on. A little bit like that. And a lot of singers in the 80s are of a similar mould to that. And one of my things is that that in rock, you'll always have an audience for good-looking guys that are great at sort of giving the look and doing the poses. And if those guys get some songs, you know, that audience is always going to be there. So in that way, I don't think that it's changed. Now you might say, well, that's not really what you're talking about, rock and roll. But I mean, it is part of rock, and you know, Elvis was a very talented singer, but he also was so popular because he just knew where to put his face and how to just give that look that just dead dropped all the girls, you know. And I think that's really okay. There's been a lot of changes and so on, but I think that that's still part of it. Now, it doesn't sound very musical coming from me, maybe, but I think that people, especially, you know, a lot of people now, they tend to forget that, but that's part of it, I'm afraid.
Yeah, it certainly is. You got to have the songs, though. You can't just have the look. You got to have the songs, too.
Yeah.
And you're on the air with us, Brian. Good evening.
Yeah, Mick, how are you doing tonight?
I'm fine, Brian.
Hey, I got a good question for you here.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know, since you went solo and you're doing so well, I want to know what different approach you had to take from making records with a supergroup, and then you went to making it with your solo records. I want to know what different approach you had to take.
As far as being in the studio, I guess is what you mean. Well, a lot of it's very similar insofar as that you've got to get out there and write the songs and so on, and but a lot of it is, of course, very different because with the Stones, making records is you're working with people that you know really well, both personally and musically, so that you know kind of thing what they're going to do, and you know what they're capable of, and you know their history, and you know all that, so that when you're in the studio with the Stones, it's very much very kind of intuitive in a way, as far as that you don't have to think quite so much and try and find out. You really know so much about the people and how they play and how they're going to react. And if you're in the studio with people you don't know so well, you've got to always take the lead, and you always have to be more definite about what you want. Because with the Stones, it's very much a collaborative effort. And by definition, doing a solo album isn't so collaborative. But both those things, the thing is that both of those things do cross over one into the other. That sometimes with the Stones, of course, it's you only, and you've got this definite idea of what you want to do. And sometimes when you're working with other people, they do collaborate with you. So in some ways, it sort of crosses over. But I think I think you can figure out from probably your own experience how different it is working with people you've worked with for over 20 years and people that you've only known for a little while. And of course, to me, the great difference is that with a band, the whole idea is to collaborate, and with a solo album, the whole idea is it's your one vision and yours alone.
There you are, Brian. Thank you for your call. And our station in Ottawa, Ohio is QT 106. We're going to go to Toronto now. Q107 is our affiliate there. And this is Bill. Bill, you're on the Rockline.
Yes, thank you.
Hello.
Hello, Mick.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
Good. Sound like you've got a Scottish accent or something there.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah, you're right. 100% right. Mick, I was just wondering how you compare the attitude of the 60s to the 80s now with censorship, with regards to Stones and yourself in particular.
Okay. Well, Scott, the thing is that in the 60s was such a different period. It's very hard to put yourself back in there, because you could, if you just had just looked slightly different at the beginning of the 60s, just from normal, and you were in a small town or even a provincial town or a town like Dallas or something, you would just get thrown things out. I mean, they would just pick a fight with you. If you were out somewhere in a coffee shop, people would just come up to you and say, "Hey, you're a girl," or what, and then that would be followed up by a riot. It would be that would be it, and then so it's hard to put yourself back in that position. I know you talked about censorship, but in the early days of the 60s and so on, that there was censorship in as far as books that couldn't be bought, movies that couldn't be shown. If you want to go to pornography, you could own. Playboy magazine was considered fantastically daring and didn't really show much.
You're listening to Rockline on the Global Satellite Network.
And so that early part of the 60s was really heavily censored. And that was one of the big things that people wanted to break open in England as well as in America. They wanted to be able to see theatre pieces and films that were banned, books that were banned and so on. So I think you find that though there's still censorship now, there's a lot less than there was then.
There you go. Thank you, Bill, for your call. A good answer from Mick Jagger, Scotia. Dwayne, meet Mick Jagger.
How you doing, Mick?
I'm doing fine, Dwayne. And how are you doing up there in Halifax?
We're a long ways away. Okay, I got a question for you. I'd like to know how you go about selecting your musicians for the 2 solo projects you have.
You get loads of names and throw them in a hat and just pick them out. No, you've got to be, I don't know, I think you start with saying, well, someone that you know is always, it's better to work with people, some of the people that you know well, that you've worked with or seen work and seen play and seen around. And then, you can go for go for people perhaps as well on top of that you think, well, this guy might really, really work, and make a slight mixture, because you never know quite what's going to come out, and there's bound to be a process of trial and error, and I think you've got to start with a rhythm section, and in the first album I worked quite a lot with Sly and Robbie, and on the second album I worked with Simon Phillips and Doug Wimbish as far as drums and bass are concerned, and you've got to have a solid foundation in any band. Then around that you can just go for different kinds of keyboard players and different kinds of strange things around the edges, and if you want to get some guitar, it's always good to use someone like Jeff Beck.
There you go.
But I think the great thing about doing solo albums is that you can really experiment with your musicians, but you've got to realise that sometimes they're going to come off really great, sometimes they're just not, and you just have to prepare to live with that. But that's the fun of it.
Also on guitar, besides Jeff, G.E. Smith, who is a great player.
Does a great job, and he worked with me when I was writing the songs when we did first demos of them, and G.E.'s worked really well on this album. And there's quite some other great musicians on there, but I think you've just got to take some chances on there too.
Good call. Thank you, Dwayne. We appreciate it. We're going to talk with Elizabeth now in Philadelphia, listening to 94 WYSP. Good evening, Elizabeth.
Hello, Mick.
Hello, Elizabeth.
How are you?
I'm just doing fine.
Oh, good. Here's my question. As a teenager and an aspiring musician, there were many things for you to wish for. There was fame, fortune, and making an impact on all the world, and a very powerful figure. And I was wondering, after all of these accomplishments, so to speak, the most important being the absolutely incredible music you've made with the Stones and on your own. After all this, besides meeting me, I was wondering what there was for you to wish for.
The moon. It's really... Yeah, well, that's a tough one, because a lot of those things when you're a child, I did so many things that I was dreaming of. By the time I was about, 25, I'd done nearly all the things that I'd set out to do that I never thought I would do, and so a lot of those professional type of ambitions were I'd really realised in the first 5 or 6 years of doing it. I think after that you've just got to, you think, well, I got to sustain this, and I want this to be better, and I want this to be more thoughtful, or I want this to be more fun, or there's a lot of times when you go backwards and you think, well, maybe I should do things like I did before rather than just doing things just for changing everything. And I do enjoy doing different things. I do enjoy doing odd parts where I get to act a little bit, and I love working around visual things. But I always come back to playing music, and rather than just seeing it as an ambition, rather like saying one day I want to be president of General Motors or something, and just seeing how far you get up the ladder. Music's kind of a different thing, where you just want to keep being creative, and I just feel that I want to be in there creating and just pleasing people and just enjoy what I'm doing. And if I can just do that, keep doing that, I'm kind of happy. But I just you just feel that what's driving you is creativity, and the ability to be continually creative is the thing that I want to keep doing.
Well put. Thank you, Elizabeth, for your call. Leah, good evening and welcome.
Hi, Mick.
Hi, Leah.
Okay, I'd just like to say this is my greatest film of my life so far.
Well,
Okay,
I'm glad you could be... What does he say?
What were you going to say?
Okay, my question concerns about Ron Wood being on Rockline earlier this week.
I didn't hear that, but...
He was great.
How was he? Was he good?
Yeah, he was. I really enjoyed it.
The Leonardo da Vinci of the Rolling Stones.
Okay, my question concerns about his comments on about maybe the Stones getting together and recording in the next 2 years or so. I was wondering if you'd want to comment on that or not.
I don't know what Ron said, but I hope the Rolling Stones go on the road as well as recording. And I don't see why they shouldn't. We had quite a long time apart, and now, and I think, I think that we should work again. It's just getting everyone in the right place at the right time in the right mood. But that's not superhuman.
I know Woody wants to do that. That's basically what he said. He would like to see the band resume and get back on the road. He really likes the road, apparently. He loves being out there.
So he's on the road now?
He's on the road now with 3 separate projects. The original Renaissance man. Leah, thank you for your call. Let's let John be on the air with Mick Jagger. He is in Logan, West Virginia, listening to FM 105 in Charleston. Hi, John.
How you doing?
Hi, John.
I'd like to know, what was it like working with David Bowie on the Dancing in the Street song for the Live Aid stuff?
Well, that was a good laugh. That was so quick that it was just like a wash in the night. It was gone. I mean, I was down there at 8 o'clock. The band was ready and the track was cut by 11, and we went straight to shoot the video. And we were still there at 6 in the morning, sort of jumping off things. But when I think that that came out in the piece of work, that it was done with a good feeling and done really enthusiastically and fast, and no hanging around, which is sometimes how rock and roll really should be, without too much worry, especially when you've got such a great song as that to deal with, that you really know well. You've heard it for ages and ages. And David was really professional in there, and though I'm not so crazy about the raincoat in the video that he wore, I thought he did a really great job. And I'm glad to see he got off his rape trial today. That was. I'm glad to see about that.
That did happen today, as a matter of fact. Did you have plans to do a movie with David at one point recently?
Yeah, we have a script which needs work, like any first draft of a script. We have a script of this film, and we hope to do it when we can both fit it in. I mean, we're hoping to do it, I don't know, within the next year or some point. But we have a lot of way to go with it yet, as far as working on it, getting it really right. But it's in the works.
Meet Mick.
How's it going?
All right, Gene. I thought it was going to be a girl, but there you go.
Yeah, you were expecting a girl.
I know.
Hi, Mick.
You'll do.
What I wanted to know was I first was introduced to reggae when I saw you and Peter Tosh on Saturday Night Live about 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And I was just wondering how you got into it, and maybe if you had some personal insight into Peter Tosh since he was killed.
Well, as to the thing about, I don't really. I don't have anything inside information on that particular kind of piece of violence down there. But as far as getting into reggae, before reggae there was a thing we used to do dance to called blue beat, and there's a lot of that sort of came around with bands like Madness and so on a few years ago. And we used to go down to these Jamaican clubs and listen to blue beat, and then just out of that kind of music developed a sort of, that was all very up, sort of ticking music, and out of that developed this other kind of beat which they call reggae beat, which is another. They're both pretty strange beats, very rock and roll and blues is just a totally different accents. But this kind of music developed, and so it just was very different. And out of all the immigrant community in England, it became popular, so it crossed over to the white community. And I think Bob Marley really sort of did it, because he was like the greatest writer out of that group, because it was a little bit difficult for other people to understand what was going on, and he kind of made it understandable without watering it down. And plus he was a great performer, and everyone seemed to latch on to Bob Marley and reggae. I think, unfortunately, since the death of Bob Marley, the music's kind of lost ground a little bit. But all the beat has been so much added, like rock and roll just takes things into the mainstream. It's like a great big mouth, and it just sucks it all in there. And the beat, now every band can play a sort of reggae beat. Doesn't mean they can play reggae, but I mean, it's a great beat to play. It's just completely different. But I'm glad you got into it through the Stones.
There you go. Thank you, Gene, for your call. And for those listeners that do not know what we were referring to, Peter Tosh was brutally slain in Jamaica after returning from a North American tour. People thought he had a lot of money in the house, and he and others lost their life. And Mick said, you don't have any inside information.
I don't know. I don't know, apart from what I read in the newspapers is just horrible.
What a waste. Thank you for your call, Gene. Let's move on now. We're going to talk to Joe in Hamilton, Ontario, listening to CKOC. Hi, Joe.
Hi. I know it sounds a bit repetitive, Mick, but how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing, and if it sounds a bit repetitive for me, how are you doing?
Okay, my question is in 2 parts. First of all, do you really enjoy making videos, or are they just a pain? And secondly, is there a big difference in making solo videos as opposed to making them with the Rolling Stones?
Make it. I don't know. If someone gives you money to make your fantasies, I don't really think you should carp and moan about it too much. Sometimes, you can't think of an idea for a video, and that's just the lack of your own imagination, really. And the only drag about videos is that that you almost have to do them if you're doing sort of singles and so on, which is always a drag to have to do something. Then it becomes a grind rather than a pleasure. I enjoy doing them. I've had a lot of fun doing them. And it makes you think on another level rather than just musically. You go and think. The thing it does affect you, sometimes when you're writing a lyric, you think, that'd be great for a video, or for the video, I found that I want to look back sometimes on when I was writing the songs, I got little notes on the side saying what you should do for the video, which is, I don't know, maybe that's a bit distracting. But I enjoy doing them. As for the thing, doing it with the Stones and doing it on your own, there's not necessarily a fantastic amount of difference in doing it, except that you know who you got in the Stones video. You're going to have the Stones on. Maybe you can do a video without having anybody of the band in it. You can do a great video without being in it yourself at all. So, your imagination is the only thing to stop you there.
First of all, Mick, I got a question for you, but I heard, I'm originally from Barbados. You can't tell from my voice, but I hear you like it down there, and I'm glad to hear that. And
yeah, it's a good place to work and a good place to have a good laugh, I think, as well.
Well, I just have most of my family down there.
Uh-huh.
And the other question is, I was summoned through a musician friend of mine, Larry Byers' house, and I came across an article from 1985, just after your first album, and it was pretty in detail about talking about singing and getting your voice into condition.
Uh-huh.
And you said that you had recently talked to Michael Jackson, and he had taken up singing lessons, and you said you thought, I think it was a pretty good idea, and I was wondering, have you since then taken up any music lessons, vocal lessons?
No, I don't remember that, because I don't know whether that's true or not. But I think one of the things that I do now, which I never used to do, which I think is a great idea, is practicing before you actually start to sing. I used to go straight into the studio or on the stage and just scream my guts out, and then wonder why I got a sore throat like about 2 minutes later. And I don't know, singing lessons might be a good idea. Maybe I should get down there and start doing the scales. I mean, I don't think it'd do any harm. But it maybe gives you better range. I don't think there's any harm in trying it. You've got to have a lot of patience with people, though, to do anything to do with lessons. Always scares me off. But I don't think there's any harm in doing some lessons at all. I think it could be, as long as it's fun and doesn't become too repetitive. I think, why not?
Thank you, Owen, for your call. We appreciate it. We're going to talk now with Joanne in Plainview, Massachusetts, a listener of WAAF in Boston. Joanne, you're on the Rockline with Mick Jagger.
Hi, Mick.
Hi, Joanne.
I'm honored to get a chance to speak with you tonight. I was wondering if there was any star that you haven't already collaborated with that you would like to work with in the future?
What, you mean like Elizabeth Taylor?
Whatever.
A duet. I don't know. I don't know. It's kind of a strange object, duetting with stars. It's kind of, whether it's really valid or not, I don't really know. I think sometimes it's a load of hogwash. They already beat me once. There's no point in me being beat all the time. I don't know. There's no one really sort of superstar thing. It doesn't really. It has to happen a bit naturally. I thought the thing with we talked a bit about the David Bowie thing before, as you know, that sort of thing seems to work when you know each other and so on. When you don't, it doesn't always work that great. So you know, phoning people up out of the blue and expecting it to work, it might work. You know, you never know if it's going to work or not. There's no harm in trying it, but I think that sort of thing tends to be a bit artificial.
Hi, Mick.
Hello.
Hi. First I wanted to say that I was at the videotaping of Throwaway at the Country Club.
Uh-huh.
I thought it was just excellent and that you're the sexiest man in rock.
Thank you, Doro.
Okay, my question to you is, having so much fame and popularity, how do you manage to keep any amount of privacy in your life?
Is that what you got in the back?
Yeah, what is that?
Sound like a budgerigar or something, is that right?
What do you have? Do you have an animal there, Laurel?
Oh, it's a bird.
Oh, it's a bird, yeah, a budgie, yeah. Okay,
So,
the other part now, yeah.
I don't know. The thing is that it's very hard.
This is a big pleasure for me. I've sang many of your songs in the shower, and I think you're an absolute genius.
So have I. I sung in the shower, I sung in the bath.
You do quite a bit. Two quick questions. I was wondering, when you and Keith sat down to write music and songs, what exactly went into it? You know, the circumstances surrounding it. I know there's zillions of songs that you guys have written, but maybe the overall view of that question. And also, where did the idea for Jumpin' Jack Flash come up? I know that's quite a ways ago, but just curious about those two things.
I just don't remember where the idea of the lyric thing came for that. I mean, I had the music. I remember Keith had the tune right down. I just don't remember. There used to be a cartoon character, I think, years ago, in the kids' paper, and I think that was maybe, I don't know, some of it. Not exactly. It wasn't called that exactly. And I can't remember where it comes from. And the thing about songs is you never quite say you've got this sequence here now. Why did I suddenly come across this? And he was talking about how you sat down and two of you writing songs together. And there's all kinds of ways to do it. And you can sit down and one guy is just humming along. I used to sometimes, with Keith, I mean, the very early days, I remember I always used to want to hit to keep the time. I used to get the trick with the telephone book. I used to get the telephone book and start banging it to keep the time while Keith wrote, was writing a melody or just the beginnings of a song, and I would just like hum along with it. And then oftentimes you can reverse the roles by saying, well, give me that a minute, and maybe you could do this, and so on. And you can do it in any combination you want. And you finally write different songs on different instruments. You know, you go out and buy a cheap little electronic piano or something, one of those you carry around with you, and you find you might write a completely different song on that to what you would write on an electric guitar and so on. So all those combinations can be used, for writing songs. And if you're going to write and do it for as long as I feel that I've been doing it, you've got to try everything.
Yeah. Back to Jumpin' Jack Flash for a second. Have you seen that movie? Have you seen that yet?
No, I never saw the movie.
Okay, you should watch that sometime.
I missed that one.
It's a great scene of Whoopi Goldberg in that movie trying to figure out the lyrics to Jumpin' Jack Flash, and it's priceless. You should check that out sometime. Sing in English, Mick, she keeps saying. Sing it in English.
Hi, Mick. How are you?
Hi, Jenny.
Great to talk to you. First of all, I'd like to thank you for making part of my fantasy come true, that is talking to you. And I'd like to tell you that the Stones are the greatest, and so are you. And I'd like to ask you, now that you've completed the solo album, what are your future plans for your musical career?
I'm back in there. I'm keeping going, and hope to do some more work and write some more songs and go out on the road and do some stuff of my own. And I hope we can do some stuff with the Stones and just keep rocking.
There you go, Jenny. Thanks for your call. We're going to take one more. It's Marty in Rochester, New York, listening to 96 WCMF. Marty, you're on with Mick.
Hi, Mick. Wanted to ask you, since you've been touring for so long, for like 25 years, if any one particular show stands out in your mind, or maybe an overall tour?
Kind of hard out of all of them. I think was a really great show was Madison Square Garden in 1969. was like, for me, I think that's the one in the Gimme Shelter. There's part of it in the Gimme Shelter film. That was a really up show, really kind of hot, really hot one. I used to like some of the old shows we used to do in England, where you'd go on in a small ballroom in the north of England, you'd do 2 numbers and girls would jump on you and you'd be dragged off the stage and that was it. And that was a short show, and those are the days of doing like 10 minutes rather than 2 hours.
Yeah, nice way to do it, yeah.
It's got something to be said for it.
Now, do you have plans to tour for this album? I had heard yes, then no, then yes, then no, and just kind of back and forth. Where do we stand at this point?
There's no plans to tour right at this moment, right as we stand here on this album, but hope to do some touring in the future.
Thank you for your call, Marty. We're going to take one more. We're going to talk to Anders in Kansas City, listening to KY 102. Good evening.
Good evening, Mick. I'd like to know if you're going to do anything with Tina Turner in the future again. I've enjoyed all the stuff you've done with her with Live Aid and when she was your opening band way back when in the 60s.
Yeah, I like working with Tina. She's a good lady to work with, and she knows where I'm going to put my feet, which is usually right on top of hers. She's always telling me what a great dancer I was, and when I actually go on stage, I'm always like clumsy all around her. It's really terrible. Yeah, I hope we get together and do something. Though I jumped up on stage with her actually on a gig in Charlotte, in the Carolinas, and did Honky Tonk Women. But it's always fun to work with her, and catch her coming around soon. And thanks for speaking to you. This is the last call, I think.
That's the last call, yeah. We've come to the end of the line here.
It didn't seem like it was 2 hours, I must say.
Good. I hope you're thinking more in terms of like a half an hour, not 2 days or something like that.
It was going to go on forever.
It went on forever, yeah. I want to thank everybody for listening and for calling. Please direct all your mail to Rockline, P.O. Box 4383, Hollywood, California 90078. Only Rockline gives you the chance to talk with the hottest stars in rock and roll live and nationwide in the U.S. and Canada on a weekly basis. Thanks to our New York Rockline production team for their expertise and all their help this evening, and thanks to you, Mick Jagger. It has indeed been a special 2-hour edition of Rockline. It's a pleasure to meet you, and for a man who's given us so much over the years, I don't know where to say thanks. Just thanks for everything.
Thank you very much, Bob, and thanks to everyone out there listening. I'm enjoying myself, and thanks for those that called in. Bye.
I'm BC, and I'll be seeing you.